Happy Devils Wednesday. This is State of the Fan of Press, presented by pucksandpitchforks.com. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Nick Villano, editor-in-chief, coming to you live from the bunker in North Jersey and South Jersey. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Some interesting moves being made around the NHL, or are they being made? Very interesting what's going on with Tarasenko and that drama. John Gibson and that drama. Lots of drama. But are there any more moves for Fitzy? That's what we're going to talk about a little bit. And then we got our good friend Dan Rice coming on to the program as well. Nick, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing really good. I froze. I wasn't even the internet. I froze. My brain froze.
Oh.
It's Sam, it's been, it's been
Here, let me help you out here so you can unfreeze. It's been a very interesting past few days since July 1st. Seems like Tom Fitzgerald got most of his dirty work done before July 2nd, right after free agent frenzy started. The worry about Bastian and McLeod put a lot of fans' anxiety to rest, meaning Devils fans, with McLeod, 1-year deal, Bastian, 2 years. They would have, it seemed like they would have signed anything because they know what's going on with the team. That it looks like a winning team. So, also, what else happened? Toffoli before that trade was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you something, Sam, and I'm going to ask our guest Dan Rice this. Did the Devils have the best top six in the NHL? I'll go through it just so you can kind of wrap your head around it. First line, I have Timo Meier, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt. And then second line, you have some mix of Toffoli, Hughes, and Mercer. And obviously, this is interchangeable. You might put Mercer on the third line. You put Hall on the second line with Hughes or whatever. And Hughes' line could be the first line, whatever. However you want to do it. But the top six, those six players, is that the best in the NHL?
Whew. That's a good question. When you're talking about an NHL, I'm really more focused on the Metropolitan Division because that's where it's stacked right now. That's a good question, Nick.
The contenders are like the Toronto Maple Leafs, whose top six includes John Tavares, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews. I'm not really sure who else, but you got the Edmonton Oilers, who obviously have the two amazing centers in Draisaitl and McDavid, and then you got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's in there, and the old Leafs player that's name's escaping me, the guy who signed from the Leafs last offseason or the offseason before. Anyway, Evander Kane's there too. They have a very good top six. Boston's is going to fall off. I was looking at their team, and they got Pavel Zacha as the number one center right now with no Bergeron, no, and a couple other guys that they might not have. That's not great. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is that I when I look at this team, I think it's definitely in the conversation. right? Like, and you got to put the Rangers on there as much as you hate it, but like Zibanejad, Panarin, Kreider, they got a really good top six. But I take the Devils over anybody, but like the one that's like really hard is the Oilers, just because they have two maybe top five players there with McDavid and Draisaitl, right? And then it's not like they have terrible wingers, like Nugent Hopkins is a natural center who's just playing wing because of how good the rest of the team is. Vander Kane, so it's
it's a good question, Nick. I'll tell you. The more I think about it, I think they have potentially the best top six right now, but I'm going to give the edge to Toronto at this moment because right now this top six hasn't really proved themselves in terms of, they haven't played yet. Toffoli hasn't been, hasn't had one game with the Devils yet. But I think overall, I mean, you look at the four lines, or even the top nine, if you want to say that, it's very, very good. I just would like to have a little bit more beef on the top nine. But I think so far right now, I mean, you have to be happy what's going on. The fact that Meyer is signed long term, Brat's signed long term. Jack
very
Hughes,
long, the longest possible.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
We're talking about the end of the decade right now that they're going to be here, 2030. I mean, at least I don't think any of them are going to get traded by then. But but I think 2025 is realistically on the radar. Nick, our next guest, he's in the, I should say, Travis Green room, now that we have Travis Green as associate head coach. His name is Dan Rice. He's a credentialed writer for pucksandpitchforks.com. You can find him on Twitter at DRiceHockey. Dan, you're on with Sam and Nick. It's been a long time since we last talked to you, Dan.
Yeah, a lot has happened since we last spoke in multiple realms. But always appreciate when you guys reach out to me, and always happy to come on.
And Dan is one of the premier voices, and yes, I'm using that pun intended. One of the premier voices, one of the premier journalists when it comes to women's hockey. So we're going to get into that in a minute. But obviously, this is the Let's Go Devils podcast, and I want to get into everything that happened with the Devils. Dan Rice, our Pucks and Pitchforks credentialed writer, going on more than a decade covering the Devils. And, Dan, this is an interesting team. You're coming off the best season in history. More wins, more points, more everything than this team, this franchise has ever seen. And now you've added to that. Maybe you've added, maybe some people might think you subtracted, but you've definitely made additions in Colin Miller and Tyler Toffoli, plus the signings of Meyer and Bratt. So I have to ask, I have a lot of people wondering whether they are done, whether this is it. What do you think? Do you think they're done? Do you think that the Tom Fitzgerald has put down the phone and he's having a Bobby Margarita right now?
I do not think they're done. I think there's you can always kind of tweak your roster. You can add here and there. I still think they probably want to add at least one more player, maybe two if they decide he wants to add a goaltender. But you have to be, as if you're a Devils fan, you have a lot to be happy about. The whole season went better than expected. You beat your biggest rival in the playoffs. That's another big check mark. Fitzgerald has won the offseason. He's made every move has come up really aces. As Sam mentioned before you guys brought me in, Meyer and Bratt, right? They signed the maximum deals they could sign. It's 8 years going until 2031. Like, that doesn't even sound like a real year. That sounds made up. Like, that's how far in the future that is. So it's like, the future is really bright, and I was just actually on our colleague Vinny Parise's show earlier today, and they asked, can they be even better? Can they duplicate this season where they, had the biggest increase from one season to the next? I don't think they could do that again, but I still think they're on that path to sustainable success, and this is just the first step of the next 5, 6, 7 seasons where the expectation is playoffs now. If they somehow find a way to add a top tier goaltender, then it's probably cup or bust. But for now, it's playoffs or bust, and that can anything can happen in a season. Players get hurt. Knock on wood, you don't want to see somebody get hurt for 40 games and another player get hurt for 30 games. But this is pro sports. This is the NHL. That happens sometimes. But their division is still tough. But you just have to get into the playoffs. And I think the moves that Fitz has made have kind of ensured that this is a new era, like a new tomorrow that started yesterday, because making the playoffs, winning a round, that's a good launching point to what they want to sustainably be.
So, I mean, the move that I don't need to beat around the bush. The move that everybody has talked about has been in net. And obviously, Vitek Vanacek was fantastic during the regular season and literally the opposite of that in the playoffs. And that's why this conversation's happening in the first place. And Schmid was fantastic in the regular season, and I still say he was fantastic in the playoffs. Sure, he had a rough go of it at Carolina, but I need to remind everybody, because I've heard a lot of people see Carolina make these moves and be like, well, we're not better than Carolina. Carolina had 5 days rest before that series, and the Devils had won. They're a young team with 1 day rest, just beat the rivals in Game 7 and had to get back up for a series, and they didn't. And it's a tale as old as time. And that includes Schmid, but Schmid also got lit up because the defense just wasn't ready for Carolina. It was a completely different play style. I could go on. I don't think they need to make a move for a goalie. What say you, Dan?
I don't think they have to, but as I said, if they did, and it was any of the 3 big names we'll say that have been mentioned have been connected to them, then my view of the team changes, and I think they can be even better. And that's, I still think Vitek is a good goaltender, had a great regular season. I believe I've said it on this show a couple of times leading up to this season. They just needed a guy that can make the regular saves. This team is going to score goals in front of you. You just have to make those savable saves and occasionally steal 1 or 2. And they're going to score 3 or 4 every night. They didn't get shut out all season, right? They were the only team, I think. Maybe Toronto is another one. But what I did see in the playoffs was I didn't see the Vitek that we saw in the regular season. I saw a guy that looked kind of like a deer in headlights. Like the game was moving maybe a little too fast for him. And that's okay. That's not the end of the world if it's something that they think is correctable. And as far as Schmid goes, he hasn't even played a full NHL season. So to me, the jury is still kind of out on what he can be. But what he showed was he can be really, really good and be kind of calm, cool, and collected in those big pressure situations. Games in Madison Square Garden with your season on the line. He really stepped up and was a driving force behind them winning that series. To answer your question, like I said, I feel fine, but I think if they added an upgrade, it would immediately kind of change the perception for me, and I think a lot of other people of what this team can, how high they can go, or how high the goal is that they can attain.
Then can I ask you which one you'd pick between Hellebuck and Gibson if you had the chance?
Can I say Soros?
Let me ask you this, because you know Fitz, and Fitz has that relationship with Nashville. But here's why I don't think they're going to go after Saros is that Fitz is very big on the traditional, like the things you can't teach, and Saros is small for a goalie. You know, he's 6'1". He's not that large. He's very athletic, but like that doesn't always take over time. So that's like, do you think that that's still who Fitz would go after?
Yeah, I think he would probably lean for the bigger goaltender. Your original question, I would probably lean towards Hellebuck, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't be mad if it was Gibson and not Hellebuck, or vice versa if it was Hellebuck and not Gibson. I couldn't be mad either way. I think very highly of both of them. I know numbers may suggest otherwise, and whatever contract Hellebuck wants may sway people's perception of whether he's worth it or not. I just kind of go back to, if you add either one of them or Saros to this group, and assuming that however that deal is made, VTech is probably going the other way, and you're looking at one of those fellas and Schmid or perhaps another veteran goalie that they pick up off a scrap heap or something. I just think it would just immediately cement them as contenders for the Cup. For now, I think they're playoff contenders. Metro is a tough division. Carolina's probably still the team to beat in the division. But other than them and Tampa in the East, I don't really see any other team where I don't think the Devils stack up to them. And even Tampa is more just I think if they got into a series with Tampa, I still think Vasilevsky would be in their heads or find a way to get into their heads because he's a really good goalie. But it's interesting. They went through Shesterkin, right? But I think Tampa's a little bit better of an overall team than the Rangers, because the Rangers kind of submarine themselves. They bring in guys they don't need and throw off all the chemistry and the Devils skated circles around them once they figured out how to play playoff hockey. I don't think any of that would change because they replaced Patrick Kane and Tarasenko with Blake Wheeler and Nick Bonino. I think they'll probably, the Rangers will have a good time against some other teams during the regular season, but in the playoffs, especially in the new NHL, those bigger, heavier, slower guys, they have to find a way to keep up with the smaller, quicker, faster teams like the Devils and Carolina and such. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
You made a great point, because this is the point I've made too. Is I got Rangers fans thinking that they've made the signing of the offseason, Blake Wheeler, for $800,000 plus incentives. He makes them better as a traditional hockey team. He makes them worse against the Devils. He makes them worse against a team this fast. He cannot be on the ice against the Devils. And maybe, we said the same thing about Kane. And then he scored that, miraculous goal in Game 4 or whatever it was, Game 5 or whatever it was, whatever game that was. Everybody's like, well, look at what, you think Patrick Kane was a bad signing, da-da-da. But it turned out to be true. He still has the skill to score goals, but he's a sieve defensively. And when you're a sieve, those fast teams are going to ruin you. When you're fast, I'm not talking about fast like Miles Wood. I'm talking about fast like Jack Hughes, who can literally hold the puck with one hand and go 100 miles an hour. So I agree with you 100%. I think the Rangers got worse when it came to facing the Devils. I kind of want to no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to add, I think if they didn't add Kane and Tarasenko, they might have had a better chance of beating the Devils in the playoffs. I mean, they did win the first two games, right? And I think a lot of that was the Devils finding themselves and everything. But as the series wore on, they were really slow and the Devils were really fast. And there's always injuries and there's injuries on both sides. And Hamilton got hurt at the end of that series and wasn't the same in Carolina. That affects your playoff performance. But I just think I've always maintained, and I've told every Ranger fan that I know or come across they had a good thing going. They had a really good season going, and they just couldn't stop themselves from just kept adding and adding and adding. And you bring those two guys in, it throws the line chemistry off. Guys are playing different roles now. It's Patrick Kane, right? You're going to defer to Patrick Kane. You're going to pass to Patrick Kane instead of shooting. You're going to pass to Tarasenko instead of shooting. And I think it just messed with their chemistry. And there's a long list of guys that the Rangers have brought in that just messed up their chemistry. It's kind of why I call them the strangers. And I did an article, and you were like, "Are you sure? Is this what you wanted to say, strangers?" And I was like, "Yeah," because they're the strangers every year. Like they have so many new guys, and they're kind of getting to know each other again. And you do it 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever, a month before the season ends. It doesn't lend yourself a lot of time to really work out the kinks, and they try and catch lightning in a bottle every time, and hasn't happened in a real long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Sam were talking about whether the Devils have the best top six in the league. We were mentioning the Maple Leafs, the Oilers. Maybe you'd still have the Lightning up there. The Kings are probably up there with PLD now in the team. What's your opinion? Do you think the Devils have the top six in the league?
I mentioned I was on Vinny's show earlier. I said they had the best top nine
nice.
there, so I kind of have to stay consistent and say, yeah, I guess so. I mean,
yeah.
I love the addition of Toffoli. That's a player that I've always liked. I think it just the fact that you're looking at probably Palat and Holla on your third line, and insert winger on the other side. And you have Meyer, Mercer, Bratt, Jack, Nico. I'm sure I forgot somebody. That's a really good group, and they're only going to get better as Jack gets 1 year older and more mature physically. His game matures as Nico gets a little bit older, as Bratt gets a little bit older, as Timo has a full camp with the team and isn't joining the team in Arizona in the middle of a road trip, right? Like, he's going to be able to have enough time to catch up to speed, and Toffoli's going to have that full summer. Love what they, getting in a pick for Severson, and getting rid of Blackwood, getting a pick for that. Like, those are guys that weren't really part of the future, and they were able to get a small asset for them. But we can kind of telegraph, like, I don't think there's going to be a big move, but we can kind of figure out what the roster is going to look like. 95% sure, right? Going into opening night. Maybe there's a spot for Foot or Holtz, and it's, kind of last man standing kind of deal. But
I think
set.
right now, I think you can put them both in the lineup right now if they make no moves.
Yeah.
But
as of today, July 5th.
The one I'm curious about is Thompson, because he's not waiver exempt anymore. So, and somebody's going to take him. He's Tage Thompson's brother. Somebody's going to take him on pedigree alone. So, he either makes the team or he's not on the team anymore. That's what I think is going to happen. That's my opinion. He was great in college. He's been injury prone in the NHL and in the AHL. But he's Tage Thompson's brother. He's much shorter. He's like 7 inches shorter or something. Like, Tage Thompson's ridiculously tall. But still, pedigree. This league is nothing if it's not if it's not pedigree. It always takes the brother of somebody or the son of somebody or so.
Look at the Maple Leafs. They have a Bertuzzi and a Domi, and everybody thinks they're going to win the cup. And I said, well, who's their goalie? Like,
yeah. Right? Yeah, I mean that's definitely that's the question of the day. You kind of mentioned just losing Blackwood and losing Severson, getting picks for them, but they lost Wood, they lost Graves, they lost a fair amount of pieces. Who got big money in free agency or got long-term deals in free agency. You got an 8 for Severson, a 6 for Miles Wood. Was it a 4 or a 5 for Ryan Graves? It was everybody got these long-term deals.
6 too.
6. So they were valued outside. Even Blackwood got a 2-year deal at a decent rate. Who do you think is the biggest loss that the Devils face this offseason?
I'm going to go a little probably not what everybody's expecting. I'm going to say Ryan Graves. I liked what he brought to the team. Big long body. Scored the occasional odd goal in like the perfect moments. Like I always love guys like that where you're not expecting. That game in Edmonton just sticks out immediately where he scored a ridiculous goal that was in the middle of a comeback. I just think he's just. It's hard to kind of find size, right? And but you have to kind of look at the landscape and for what he commanded and he deserved, the Devils weren't willing to go to that because they know they have to pay Luke Hughes in a couple of years and Nemec in a couple of years as well, and those guys they're basically here. Hughes is here already, so I think the loss of Graves just to have that another veteran depth D. Maybe Miller ends up being a solid replacement in that kind of role, where I think him and Smith will kind of one off and one will be in and one will be out. I'd be shocked unless somebody's hurt if both of them are in at the same time. But yeah, that would be the big one for me. And Jersey was never going six years for Miles Wood.
Yeah.
I think everybody who's watched Devils game over the years knew like if he ever hit the open market, somebody was going to give him a ridiculous term because they're going to see, ooh, he's really fast and he can, he's very physical and we've watched him game in and game out for 5-6 years now, and I think he kind of reached his peak and he's not going to get any higher, and he is what he is at this point. Hopefully he does great in Colorado. They've always kind of been a fast team, so that kind of fits. I kind of expected him to land there or Edmonton. Tatar not coming back is another one where he hasn't signed yet, right? I don't think he's signed anywhere.
He's not. Why do you think that is? Why do you think he hasn't signed? I don't mean to cut you off, but I got to know. Why do you think he hasn't signed yet?
I think it might be teams figuring out if they're in on Tarasenko or not, if they're in on another player or not, and that might be a fallback. Like the Devils fans have kind of been through that where they were kind of in on somebody and didn't get them, and then they had a plan B, and plan B was like Dan McGillis or Mike Camilleri or something like that. And plan B doesn't work out too often, but Tatar is a good player. I think he'll help a team out. Probably ends up, somewhere like the Islanders, like the Lightning. Probably gets a 1-year deal, bet on himself again, and then next year when the cap goes up, he'll be in the same boat again, looking for a longer term, probably 3-4 year deal.
The Tarasenko thing makes sense because I'm thinking like at this point we're 5 days into it. We're a few days away from is he stuck to sign on a PTO, which is insane because he was really good during the regular season this year. But you're right. I think the Tarasenko domino has to fall. Now that you pointed that out, that makes a lot of sense.
The Brinket might be another one too, right? He's supposed to be traded, so if a team can't land him, maybe Ottawa, wants to sign this player after they do that move or something like. So who knows? I don't think he'll be PTO. I think he will get a deal. I just don't think it'll be the multi-year deal that he's probably looking for. It'll probably be a 1 or 2 year deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Tatar is gonna find someplace. One of the surprising moves that Tom Fitzgerald made, and you call it the cojones of steel, when he just let McLeod and Bastion walk into free agency and then brought them back that same day, basically. How important was it for him to get those guys back?
Yeah, and Boquist too. That kind of caught me off guard. But we've seen that before in the past where teams do this, and the Devils have done it, and then re-sign their guys. It's just a deadline that you have to file paperwork or don't file it. I think they both got what they probably could have got a little bit more on the open market. I I think winning helps, and I think it was Bastion that said, Fitzy kind of had us because he knew we wanted to be here, so you have to take a little bit less. But they're good team guys. McLeod was probably one of the best players in the playoffs. Top 5 or 6, I would say. Just for the face-offs, the goals, the puck possession, the physicality. Like him, and those are two good playoff type players. And they're not going to be. They know their roles basically. Like, I had this discussion with John Madden years and years ago about how everybody's kind of a really good player in their own right? But when you're on a team and if you want to be successful, sometimes you have to put your ego at the door and accept a different role than maybe you had in college and junior on another team. Mike McLeod was a first-round pick. I don't think he envisioned on draft day that he was going to be like the fourth-line center for the Devils 6 years later. I'm sure he envisioned being the second-line player. Things change, though. You end up getting 2 generational centers in Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a different spot in the pecking order. He hasn't complained or anything like that. He just kind of shows up, comes to work, busts his ass, and he's turned into a really effective player. And a far cry from his first game I think he played was down in D.C. He made a mistake, got benched, and that was it. He played like 43 seconds in his debut, and this year, like I said, in the playoffs, was one of their most effective players in some big games, and he had the game winner in Game 7. So doesn't get bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, that was a lot of Devils talk, and I appreciate you coming on. You're a guy, you're talking Devils, but you're just the women's hockey. Like, it's you, it's Mike. There's a couple people out there that are just really on top of it. Jeff Marek is one of the nationally known names that's big into the women's hockey, and he kind of, I don't want to say he broke this because he didn't, but he was definitely like hearing rumblings of this, and then kind of out of nowhere, we now have one women's hockey league ? And we liked it at first, but then a bunch of weird stuff happened, and we don't like it. Like, can you walk me through this, Dan? Somebody needs to explain this to me.
All right. I'm going to try and make this as less confusing as possible, or as least confusing as possible. This other entity, which they weren't really a league, they kind of played. If everybody's listening, watching, you've heard of the Harlem Globetrotters, I'm sure, where they kind of play these kind of, show up to your city and put it on a show kind of games. That's what that was like. There wasn't a lot of defense being played. There wasn't actual team names based on cities. There were sponsor, Harvey's, wall bangers, or whatever the secret deodorant, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that they had all the Olympic players. A lot of those players used to be in the PHF, which used to be the NWHL. Didn't want to be a part of that for whatever reason. They have the backing of a huge investor, a minority owner with the Los Angeles Dodgers, I believe, and Billie Jean King's enterprise. They basically bought out the PHF. They quote unquote bought their assets. We still haven't gotten a real definition as to what that is. So as of a week ago Thursday, so 6 days ago, the PHF ceased to exist. There were over 120 players, signed to contracts already for the upcoming season. Some of them close to $100,000, some of them below that. As far back as a day before this was announced, there was a signing announcement, and a lot of times these players are signed, and then the teams will wait a couple of days or a week and then announce it. There were still a few more signings that hadn't been announced that were coming. all that just kind of got erased. For women's hockey fans that have been following me on Twitter, I've been using a lot of Thanos gifs, a lot of snapping of the fingers, excuse me, and half of women's hockey disappearing, because that's basically what had happened. PHF had 7 teams. This other PWHPA had 4 teams, so that's 11. I can do that math. I went to journalism as a major for school, not math. So that's 11 teams, though, and now they're allegedly going to be 6 teams. So that means a lot of players that signed or had planned on signing aren't going to be playing here in North America this season. The players, the way that it, and I don't hold any animosity towards the other players that are on the other side of this, 100%. I think they're doing what they believe is right. Hopefully, in the long run, this is what's good for women's hockey. But the way that it happened and the way that it went down is super shady and suspect. Players didn't know until Thursday night, maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes before the call happened. I was doing my live show on Twitter around the rink, and we were kind of reacting to it in real time because I had a player that was in the town hall Zoom call that lasted 10 minutes that told them, yeah, those contracts you signed, they're all voided now. Like, this league doesn't exist anymore. A player was kind of giving me real-time updates. Just really sucks. The goal is so that these players now, when this new league starts, that they don't have to have a second job, which was a thing that a lot of PHF players had. Nearly every team had players that were additionally, whether it was a teacher, a coach, a gym teacher, a scientist, you name it. Like they work at banks. They do everything. Everything under the sun, occupational therapist. So one girl who I talked to over the weekend was signed for the upcoming season, was an occupational therapist the last couple of years and was balancing both and said, I'm going to be making a little bit more money this year. Things are going up. We have a brand new salary cap that's going to be $1,025,000. So I'm going to really commit to this. Quits her day job. And now she can't get her day job back because there's no hockey league. She's not an Olympic level player. She's not a top pair defender on any team. She's a good, reliable middle pair defender, playing all situations, eat up minutes, block shots, that kind of stuff. And she can get that job back, but not the way that she had it. And there's a lot of players that find themselves in those situations. How many players will survive? I'd say at most 20% of the PHF players will probably be in this new league. And that's
20?
I mean, you're looking at 6 teams. Think about it like this. Think about it from the goaltender's point of view. Goaltenders, there's only 2 spots per team. You going from possibly 11 teams to 6. That's almost splitting your workforce in half. A team's going to carry 3 goalies. Maybe one might, maybe another might. But for a lot of goaltenders, it's like, well, crap. Like if I'm not in a certain area where this team is going to be, or if I don't know somebody, who's in the selection process to building this team, I probably don't have a job here this year. Like, goalies is always tough. We talk about that a lot on my show. My co-host is a former goaltender. And we went through it in the PHF offseason where there's 7 teams and we felt like we needed 2 or 3 more teams because there was so many good goalies and a few were kind of getting left behind. It's really tough. Like I said, there'll be some players that survive. Everything that I've heard, that there won't be a team in Minnesota, there won't be a team in Boston. Those were 2 really big hubs and 2 big talent pools of the PHF. I'm curious to see how it all plays out. I haven't heard all the details. As I've told I've had a lot of tough conversations over the last couple of days. All the relationships that I built up over the years with all these players, the staff, and that's it too. Like the people that work for the teams, not just the coaches, the social media managers, the community liaisons, like those kind of people, like they just lost their jobs, and that's the end of it. Like, just one day you have a job and the next you don't, and I get that's the way business works sometimes, and especially the PHF. I've told everybody it's a startup business. Um, my anger is mostly directed at the ownership group, the board of governors. Um, just they went about it like real shady and feels real snakish to me. And that's mostly where my anger has kind of been directed when I go through that phase. I go through a lot of ups and downs. One player said to me, thanks for always coming out to cover our games, and I always appreciated coming to town because I knew you were going to be there to ask me some interesting questions and not just the run of mill kind of hockey stuff. And then she said, hopefully we cross paths again, and that's when it kind of hit me like. I built up a lot of these relationships, and I don't know when I'm going to see a lot of these people again, face to face at least. We have Zoom calls and stuff like that, but for me, I don't know, what's next. I'm kind of just going to keep doing my show, and that's kind of evolving now too. It was around the rink in the PHF, and now it's just kind of around the rink, and. Tomorrow night, I'm gonna kind of expand on some of this stuff and kind of air some grievances. Kind of go through some of the things that I've been hearing from players and people I've talked to, and going forward from there, I'm gonna try and bring players on, whether they end up in this league or have signed already overseas. I have a couple of players lined up that were signed already to play overseas that played in this league last year, and kind of watching all this from the sidelines, and I'm really curious to get their perspective and what the things that they've heard in discussions with players, and it's a lot of, like I said, a lot of tough conversations, and a lot of people really caught off guard by the news. Hopefully, in the end, it's the best thing for everybody, and I get that's the way that people want to always kind of look at the positive, but I can't just ignore the fact that so many people just lost their jobs, or if they bought a house or bought a car, right? Or you put a down payment on a car thinking you're going to get paid $85,000 to play this upcoming season, and then your contract got terminated. It was a pretty sad day in that regards.
I mean, I have to think that they thought this through, but I know I used to cover the news in Florida, and I know there's a law that like you can't terminate contracts like that all at once without telling the state first. And I know there's a lot of states that have that. I wonder if they're going to get in trouble for this. That's a hefty fine if you make that mistake. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot going on.
As far as I know, all the players had an at-will termination in their clause in their contracts. I'm not a legal person. My friend Eleni is become a player agent. She's also a lawyer. And so she knows more about that stuff than I do. But it's my understanding that as long as that clause is in the contract, they're able to do that. There is supposedly a pool of $1 million that each player gets kind of a percentage of. So if you were supposed to make $80,000, you're going to get $5,000 or something like that as kind of like a payout. But that doesn't replace whatever you had planned for the upcoming season, whether it was, like I said, a down payment on a house, a car, an apartment, applied for a job somewhere. Like, there's a lot of other stuff that goes along with it. And there's also repercussions. I haven't been able to confirm with anybody with the team, but somebody very close to the Riveters team told me, they had played this past season at American Dream here in New Jersey at the American Dream Mall. And the American Dream refurbished and rebuilt a locker room for this team because they had signed a multi-year deal to have them play in their rink. So now I heard that whatever was left behind, the team has no access to because the team doesn't exist anymore. And I can kind of see it from the Mall's perspective, where they had a deal and now they don't have a team to live there. So, what's in their building is theirs. It's dumb. If I was on the Riveters, I would be really mad. If I was one of the staff members that maybe left something in a desk, or a player that left something in a locker room thinking I'm coming back in September, chances are they might not be getting that stuff back. But I can kind of see both sides of that. Like I said, I can kind of see the business's point of view from it as well. Doesn't make it right, but there's going to be a lot of those type of things. They're going to pop up because just the league just one day ceased to exist. And the tough part was for me. I put a lot of work into this, and I really believed in specifically the players. And I feel kind of like I wish I could have done more. Not that I let them down, but just it felt like a loss. Again, to make another Avengers kind of reference, that scene when Star-Lord says, "What just happened? Did we just lose?" Like, that was my immediate reaction, because so many people are really affected by this, and a lot of players probably will never play again. But this is, for the good of the game, for the next generation. Hopefully it works out, and hopefully in 3, 4, 5 years from now, I can come back in here and tell you how much of a rousing success it's been. But a lot of tough days, a lot of tough conversations, and there's going to be a lot of weird shit that comes out of it. If you want to go and collect some of these jerseys and memorabilia, I would say do it now, because it's going to be like a Bed Bath & Beyond. This stuff is going to get liquidated pretty quick. And I'm sure that the team sites will be closing real soon. And then there's always My Gray, which is a great resource for game used equipment and jerseys. A lot of great Devils stuff on there too.
Nice.
I'm actually going to a Jersey Expo in August, and there's supposed to be some Devils related stuff going on there. So,
love to hear that. There you go, live podcast. Sam, what do you think?
I think that's great.
Sam was not paying attention. That's
no.
Okay.
Sorry.
Jersey Expo in August. There's going to be Devils related stuff. Let's bring some Let's Go Devils podcast jerseys. Anyway,
there's not many of them.
Dan, we've kept you all night. We really appreciate you spending time with us, talking Devils, talking women's hockey. Real quick, promote what you got going on. You said you have the Around the Rink podcast happening tomorrow. You're going to talk about the latest in women's hockey. What do you got for Pucks and Pitchforks? What do you got from, if you're still doing Ice Garden, let us know what you got coming up.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I do Around the Rink. I'm going to do it tomorrow night. I do it live on Twitter Spaces, and then the next day it's available in podcast form. You can look for back episodes. Just search for the Ice Garden wherever you listen to podcasts. On Twitter, you can just search for Around the Rink in the PHF, which won't be added on the subsequent ones. But did a lot of cool player interviews the last couple of weeks. Still writing at the Ice Garden. Nothing really in the works just yet over there. We're all kind of catching on. At least for me, I'm definitely kind of gaining my bearings. Pucks and Pitchforks next week. I am heading over to Devils Development Rookie Camp. I believe Wednesday night is the night that I'll be there. They have the 3-on-3 scrimmages, I believe. Gonna head over there. Hope to bang out a couple of interviews for some summer content for you guys, for Devils fans to be reading. Really stoked about the upcoming season. The one silver lining with the end of the PHF, and like I said, I've kind of been through all these emotional roller coaster of being angry and sad and depressed, and I thought, now I can have a lot of my weekends. More of my weekends will be freed up. I want to take some trips to go see some Utica games, whether it be up there or if Utica plays closer here, Connecticut. I know they come through Bridgeport or Lehigh Valley, even Wilkes-Barre, Hershey. So that's all stuff to be excited about, to be looking forward to, and I'm really looking forward to this upcoming Devil season. I think again the sky is the limit for this group, and just 8 years of Meyer and Bratt and Nico and Jack and Mercer probably, and so on and so on. And Toffoli said he wants to stay, and let's sign him to a deal like Halla's and get him here for 2 or 3 years, and let's have a good run at this, and let's have some fun. Like the last 10 years sucked, especially the last the COVID years felt a lot longer than regular years for obvious reasons, but hopefully we continue on this upward trajectory. And lastly, if people listening don't already know, you can find me on Twitter at dricehockey or Dr. Ice Hockey, however you want to view it. Everybody looks at it.
I never saw that. It's pretty good.
So, whatever works, whatever works. I still have some people that call me doctor, so.
Love that. All right, Dan. Well, we appreciate
always,
you coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
As always, I just want to say thank you to you guys for having me on. You guys do a great job. It's great to see you guys doing so well and see the consistency of people tuning in all the time and the traffic the site has been driving. So everybody keep up the great work. Have a fun summer. Get along with each other, and hopefully have another fun season ahead of us.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. That is Dr. Rice. No, I'm just kidding around. Dan Rice of pucksandpitchforks.com. You find him on Twitter at D Rice Hockey. Sorry about that. Dr. Ice Hockey. That's what it is.
Dr. Ice Hockey. That's pretty good.
Wow.
Sam, that was one of our longer interviews. I think that you've had some long interviews on the flagship show.
No. Not even close to Chico. Chico's a marathon runner.
Yeah. Chico and Bryce. Those two. Bryce is great. And Chico's the same way. Bryce, you just go, you ask a question, I'll start writing an article, I'll start tweeting at people, I'll have conversations, and Bryce the same way. It's like, Bryce, can you analyze Miles Wood's game? And I'm going to go get a sandwich, and I'm just kidding. We definitely pay attention to all content, but you know what I mean. And you never know when they're going to end. That's the thing, Sam. They could talk for 8 minutes straight, no breath.
Oh, yeah.
And then just stop at a random point, and you need to have that next question ready and willing to go.
I was taking in all the PHF, that whole buyout, and it's, I was just taking it all in because I had been reading about it, and I don't know what's true, what's not, but I kind of agree with Dan with this. When he says shady, I like to say, there's something up. There's something going on because the PHF, I guess is it board of governors or what they call it? The people that run the PHF. It almost seems like
that's the thing is that I really tried and this is sorry, just to answer how confused I am about this whole thing. I really tried to get into women's hockey when the Devils had that partnership with the Riveters. Do you remember that? That seems like a million years ago.
Yeah.
But I really tried. I tried to get the site into women's hockey, try to get people to write about women's hockey. But it's been so hard to follow. So many things happen and then this happened. I'm like, I'm out. Not out. I'm just out and trying to figure out what's going on. You know what I mean? I can't.
I'll tell you what. If it wasn't for Rebecca Morse, who's a good friend of the podcast, she actually, there were several dinners I had with her. She tried to explain to me what the heck is going on. When it was the NWHL and then the PHF, and then it's like, I understand.
Wasn't there
I understand.
a CWHL or something?
You see, what it is, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but hopefully my facts aren't. off. But what's throwing me off, Judy Agnew, thank you. She's asking if did Nick go to Temple, and that's been throwing me off the entire podcast. Yeah, it's just anyway. So
My wife went to Temple. Me
Oh,
and
she did?
my wife met at Temple while she was going to Temple.
I thought
So-
you guys met in West Virginia.
No, I went to West Virginia,
Okay,
but we met at Temple.
gotcha. Okay, that makes
So she
sense.
went to Temple, graduated, and then I went to West Virginia. And, we both went there.
Oh,
Like she didn't. She worked in news in West Virginia while I was going to I was going to college, and then we went to Florida.
so are you going to Penn State, Virginia, West Virginia, at Happy Valley in early September?
No, I'm going to. Sorry, Sam. We go to the real rivalry, and that's West Virginia Pitt.
Okay, oh, whatever. Pitt.
Penn State. Penn State is a
Is Pitt
rival.
real
This
school? Anyway, sorry.
is.
That's
Listen,
what we can agree on.
I don't like Penn State, but we can bond over our hate of Pitt.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I
anyway,
hate Penn State less because I like your coach. But
well,
anyway,
just getting back to the NWHL and PHF. So I think what happened is there was a split amongst the players. You had certain players that were, I wouldn't say higher pedigree, but they were kind of the face of women's hockey. So to speak.
they're the famous ones.
Yeah, the
Amanda
famous-
Kessel. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, or Hillary Knight,
Yeah.
the ones that, are always the headliners. They felt strongly it's either you pay us or we don't have a league kind of thing. That pay us
Yeah.
fairly, none of this BS startup. No, it's basically two different directions. And then you had the other group of players like, well, if you don't put your time in and get this thing going, it's never going to happen. But it wasn't so much settling for less. It's just a typical startup. We're going to get in on the ground floor. It's two ways of looking at it, and it's just always been this rival. Kind of reminds me of XM Satellite Radio and Sirius XM. I'm sorry, Sirius.
Yeah.
So Sirius. And then they merge. It kind of feels like that a little bit. But honestly, to cut teams, I would if it just seemed like, I don't know, have they looked at the balance sheets of the Whitecaps, because they're always sold out. Boston,
Yeah.
I think they sell out pretty well. So that's kind of
He was just talking about the Rivers having the American Dream Mall deal.
Oh, I'd be pissed if I was one of the Riveters players and I had my stuff in there.
I have to think the mall is going to let him in. This has
Let
to
me
be
tell
a tactic.
you, this is what we're gonna do, Nick. Outdoor game, okay? I will ask these players on the Riveters, have you gotten your stuff out? That outdoor game, we're gonna march through the cattle tunnel, into the American Dream Mall to get their stuff. February
Have you been to
17th.
the American Dream Mall? I've never been there.
Yes,
I haven't been there yet, so-
I've been there several times. I actually went there on Christmas. Let me tell you something. The place is a jinx. Anytime I go in there, something bad happens. The Riveters go in there, something bad happens. But they do have a nice
that thing
candy
is,
shop. They do have a nice
that
candy
thing has
shop.
the thing has been cursed for over a decade. So
A decade. It's been cursed since 2003 when they took over our tailgating
So 2
spot.
decades.
Yeah, 2 decades. It used to look like what was that? It looked like
It
a
was an
bad
eyesore.
virus. Just the eyesore, the colors that they picked for the ski
Yeah, it
jump.
was-
Oh,
and then it closed for a while, right? That was like,
oh yeah.
man, New Jersey's got some wild things. Anyway,
They open up
we're-
and then
yeah.
COVID hits. I mean, geez, nothing better. Than it's a jinx.
it's a
They should
jinx.
just knock it
is.
down at this point. Anyway,
I'm ready for plugs, Sam. Whenever you are, we went long with Dan, so I'm ready for plugs.
yeah, I almost want to do another podcast about the PHF and what happened. But anyway,
Call Moose.
yeah, I gotta call Moose. We gotta
Make it a morning woo.
Yeah, we gotta do Moose. If you're listening right now, we gotta do some authentic Chinese food or Portuguese or something like that. She's a foodie like like me. So when we go out to eat, it's a big affair. Just
I never get invited to these dinners. I'm not cool enough.
all right. You're invited.
Foodie
You're invited. What are you doing next
Come
week?
down to Philly. Philly's got some of the best food.
Chickies and Pete's,
Northeast.
snow crabs. So buy one get one
All right,
free.
yeah, I'll take it to Chickies and Pete's and Chegg.
Yeah, it's every Wednesdays. Chickies and Pete's, buy one get one free. Snow crabs. Anyway, yeah, plug away. Yep.
So on pucksandpitchforks.com right now, we got I got a piece comparing the possibility of Connor Hellebuyck or John Gibson. Jersey Joe wrote about the impact that Tyler Toffoli and Colin Miller are going to have. David Holliday was talking about every free agent decision and how it's going to affect the team moving forward. Jonathan Bailey talked about Zach Parise and why a reunion should be at least under consideration. And then I talked about 5 free agents the Devils should still consider. Coming up on pucksandpitchforks.com, I'm going to be talking about why Nico Hischier is going to win the Selke Trophy soon. Why the Devils can no longer be called a team with a lack of playoff experience. And I'm going to talk about the top 6. I'm going to talk about where the Devils rank in those top 6 rankings. And, I'm kind of, we're playing wait and see. You know what I started working on again, Sam?
What's that?
I even feel bad bringing this up. But I started working on the top 50 of all time. Top 50 Devils of all time. It's going to come out. I want to try to get it done this month. That's my goal. We're about halfway done with it.
You know what I got to do with you, Nick? We got to talk off air about this because I'm going on a 9-day cruise in the middle of the ocean. And I don't know how to continue the podcast when I'm away. I'm going to try. I actually talked to a couple telcos out there in Canada and Alaska about doing a podcast from a cruise ship. But maybe I'm going to take some of your articles if I can't do it in pre-record. So we'll have fake live a podcast.
All right. We don't need to
based on your articles. Top 50 of all time, top 10, all that kind of stuff. So maybe I should do an aggregate of all the fine work on pucksandpitchforks.com. We'll have to talk about it.
There's going to be plenty. When are you going on the cruise?
August 18th through August 30th, I believe.
Oh, that'll be perfect. There's going to be so much. I got my what ifs. My what if ideas are in the chamber. What if the Devils got the first pick in the 1991 draft? What if Valerie Zalapuka never got hurt? What if the Devils never traded Bat for Beak? What if the Devils moved to Hoboken? Those are just some of the what ifs that we're working.
Wow.
Maybe we'll do a what if podcast.
Wow.
What if the Devils were named the Highlanders?
The Islanders and the Highlanders in the same division? That's kind of odd. I want a Swamp
I'm
Dragon.
going to give you a little spoiler. If the Devils were named the Highlanders, they wouldn't be in New Jersey anymore.
Oh, that's true. R. Nunez says AI Sam Wu podcast. Can you believe that?
Oh, I'm going to talk to GPT.
Yeah, be like, Taylor Hall is no longer with the New Jersey Devils. He sucks.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. All right, Sam, that's all I got. Plug away. Let's get out of here.
I will hit the music. Now I'm talking like a robot. Anyway, so keep it here. Hopefully, maybe there's going to be breaking news soon. I mean, the whole thing with Connor Hellebuyck, is there a little bit of kumbaya going on with the Winnipeg Jets and Hellebuyck right now? Tarasenko, anything official yet? We shall see.
Nothing official. Nothing. He
Strickland,
fired his agent today.
Yeah, and he hired.
That thing's wild.
And he hired the folks that is that Dougie Hamilton's agent as well.
I think it's Jack Hughes' agent too.
Yeah,
I think the agency represents all of them, right?
Yeah,
they represent Hughes and Dougie and a couple other guys.
And the John Gibson thing, and his folks and Frank Saravalli, that Twitter drama. I'm caught up in it, man. I am caught up in it. Yeah,
It
so
is fun.
but nothing to plug there other than you may hear me on the Morning Woo tomorrow, depending upon what time I get out of bed. I usually roll out of bed to do a podcast now to fit the demand of what the Let's Go Devils podcast can do. But I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to all those Metropolitan Riveters. I will get your stuff back. Nobody says no to Sam Wu. I will harass them. No, just kidding. Can't say that. I will be persistent through the legal channels of getting their stuff back. We may have to turn February 17th into an early morning protest at American Dream Mall. You betcha. Anyway, all right. I'll see you later, Nick. Till next time, let's go Devils.